for that.
Yes, no problem.
Good afternoon, Lofty. Good afternoon, Paula. Good afternoon to your listeners and viewers. And thanks for having me.
Yes, indeed. Diawell, you are no stranger to Civic Vibes. And so again, good afternoon on behalf of all the many viewers at this time and listeners. Welcome on board this afternoon.
Yeah, man, my pleasure.
Yes, thank you very much. We're also supposed to be having Beverly. Beverly, are you there for us already? All right, I can't hear Beverly as yet. Let me see if that is Cassandra. Cassandra, are you there? Okay, someone else is there with us, but that person seems not to be getting on in terms of the audio as yet. So let us start the ball rolling, start the discussion rolling here. Dwyer with you will rectify the other persons like Beverly and Cassandra if Cassandra comes on from Grenada in just a bit. Dwyer, again, you know, St. Kitts and Nevis for the past month or so, they are in the news. The people of St. Kitts and Nevis are in the news, as it were, and you guys are smack in the center of a snapped general election called by Dr. Timothy Harris. What is the mood of the people on the street, Dwyer, at this time?
There's a sense of disquiet on the ground, but that's not the only sense. There's a sense of relief among people who want to see the end of him and his politics. There's a sense in quarters that are on the reverse side of that, to a sense of hope that he will remain the prime minister. People are registering like crazy. A lot of very suspect things are happening outside the electoral offices. People are being registered in or transferred to constituencies in which they live, so that in which they do not live, forgive me, so that you have a lot of challenges taking place at the electoral office level. Parties are organizing. Now, it's odd, maybe not, but what your listeners and viewers, those who don't already know, ought to know is that we have a coalition government here. They just got re-elected 2 years ago, but there have been misgivings from day one. And those misgivings, if you will, grew and grew and grew to the point where everything broke out. They couldn't get along anymore. So you're going to have this quick election just 2 years later. 6 of the 9 elected members of the cabinet essentially mutinied. They told the Governor General they had no confidence in the Prime Minister, and then they proceeded to file a motion of no confidence in the Parliament. They asked the Governor General to replace the Prime Minister with one of the others. And he told them, and rightly so, that there was no constitutional door for him to walk through and make that wish come true for them. He couldn't do it. When you apply for a motion of no confidence here, it has to be heard within 21 days if the notice of motion and the motion are in order. The Speaker of the House waited and waited and waited. He said he was seeking legal advice. And the Prime Minister, the day before the due date for the sending out of the notices, fired these 6 ministers and asked the Governor General to dissolve the House. So 2 of the 3 parties in that coalition still have not been able to announce to the country their full slates of candidates. 2 of the 3 parties in the coalition. So although this anger and this dissension was brewing and mounting over the years, while Timothy Harris, with his 2 seats, was on a clear and highly visible program of expanding his party's footprint into the other constituencies, it seems like his main partner here in St. Kitts, which is the People's Action Movement, was not doing anything of the sort. So up to this very moment, Lofty, we have 8 constituencies in St. Kitts, and they still have to let the country know who their candidates are in, let me see, 3, 6, 7, and in 4 of the 8 constituencies in St. Kitts. And this is a major party that just fell out of the coalition. The other party in the coalition, which is the People's Labour Party, with 2 seats, they are yet to name their full slate of candidates as well. And interestingly enough, the only party in St. Kitts which has announced its full slate of candidates is the opposition party. So that's where we are at the present. We haven't had an election date announced, and a lot of suspicion as to activities being generated on behalf of the Prime Minister in order to help him get reinstated as Prime Minister. The odds of that don't seem very favorable to him, though. Not in a free and fair election. So that's it in a nutshell here.
Wow. So I took note you said that no date has been announced as yet. Why do you guys think so? What is the situation surrounding that?
Well, he's asked the Governor General to dissolve because he wanted to fire the 6 of them. It is my opinion that they should have resigned and not remained, or not allowed him the opportunity to fire them. But he fired them and is boasting about it. He wants more time to get as many people registered as possible. Let me give an example of some of the things that are reported very quickly. He has some characters who are stationed outside the electoral office to receive people coming in who are transported in to the electoral office to have them register or transfer their voting place. I am told that he is being allowed to take his people and put them at the head of the line. People are very upset about it, but St. Kitts people are normally very docile until they reach a point where there's no return. And so the Prime Minister wants time to get as many people as he can get in. But he has a time limit of 90 days from the dissolution of the Parliament to hold an election. Okay. That would carry him to around the 7th or 8th of August. But a lot of people are speculating that the election will be held in July.
So there's still some speculation as to what really is going on there. We really date the exact date that the people of St. Kitts and Nevis should be going to the polls.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The anticipation, as I said, is July, but he can go down to around the 7th or 8th of August. The problem is we have the St. Kitts Music Festival here towards the end of June. That will be an opportunity to give a lot of people free tickets and make them feel good and happy. Yesterday, on the street in town where most of the government offices are, where the government headquarters is located, just below there, party T-shirts were being handed out, and we are told that there were things inside the T-shirt. As we speak, we are told that there's at least one village in which goodies are being handed out. There's a lot of talk of a lot of money being given away. And the recriminations between the two falling out factions of the coalition government. Well, there are three. The one in Nevis is the CCM, and they are getting their abuse too. But most of the abuse and the accusations are going to and fro between Timothy Harris's PLP and its surrogates and the People's Action Movement, Sean Richards and their surrogates. So the music festival, people believe that they will allow that to pass rather than have it before. And some people are looking at maybe the 4th of July weekend, in which case citizens living abroad can come home because overseas people can vote. Overseas citizens can vote here once they're duly registered and comply with the law. And so people are thinking either shortly after the music festival or shortly before Culturama, which is the Nevis Carnival, which is held on the August holiday weekend. So somewhere in there.
Is that though, just a question here for clarity, is that the norm that is the statement or the situation that went on 2 weeks ago, that no date would have been, kind of in the air as yet as to exactly when the people go to the polls? Is that the norm, or, is that the first time thing?
I don't think it's the first time. It's not the norm, but it's allowed.
Okay.
The Constitution allows for 90 days maximum to elapse between the dissolution of the parliament and the next general election. The Constitution allows for it.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Dwyer, in terms of, let us get down to something a little much more specific now.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of a fixed date for election, what is your views on that, sir?
I am a fixed date person. For a number of reasons, I won't go into all now because we could write a paper on that. But the primary reason, Lofty, is when you have a system in which the prime minister decides the date of the election, and that same prime minister is a contestant in the election, that is tantamount to a person being a judge in a case in which he or she is a litigant. You can't be judge and still a litigant. So he will pick a date that best suits his or her political interests. That is not how election dates are supposed to be set. We inherited this system from England. There are a lot of conventions that exist in England and a lot of respect for those conventions, so that that system may not be abused there as much as it would be abused here in these younger democracies where our leaders don't even respect the constitutions that are written, far worse the conventions that are unwritten. So while, as I said, it is not the usual thing, it is permissible under the Constitution.
Okay, but the man Dwyer Astafan is one for fixed dates for election, fixed date for election.
You must have fixed date. You must have fixed date election. Must have fixed date. Nothing else can be fair. Why should only the prime minister know Lofty? And he's running for election. So you think he's going to choose, like in Dominica, you think Mr. Scarrett is going to choose the date which he thinks best suits Mr. Linton?
Not at all.
Quite to the contrary. That means that the election itself is based fundamentally on an injustice. So that needs to go.
But Dwyer, if we should stay on that point a little longer, governments come, governments go, and you hear the same refrain over and over again. Who do you, Dwyer, blame sort of for some of the quote-unquote nonsense? For example, that no fixed date for election. We have not just in St. Kitts and Nevis, not just in Dominica, but across the region. Who do you blame for that? Where should we start to try to rectify that issue to the benefit of the people?
All of us, but the politicians are the one in power. And they have the education system, they have the public dissemination system. The politicians, the bar associations, the NGOs, the professional organizations, the trade and labor unions, all of society, because Lofty, we need to change our constitutions. We need to change our political culture. And fundamentally, we need to change our attitude towards the way we do things. And it is those things that will introduce a new political arrangement in the country, which will include fixed date elections. For example, I advocate also, I don't want to get ahead of myself, I advocate that we should have presidential elections, or if you want, prime ministerial elections. And so if Lofty wants to run for prime minister, and Athi Martin wants to run for prime minister, and whoever else wants to run for prime minister, you all run for prime minister. At the same time, whoever wants to run for the legislature, they run for the legislature. They run, they win their seats, that's the legislature. You run and you become the prime minister of Dominica, and you appoint people to your cabinet. When you start to rely on people who are elected, you are really decimating the value of the parliament as an independent arm of the separation of powers.
True.
And so I believe that you should have prime ministerial or presidential elections. So Lofty becomes the prime minister of Dominica. He wants to pick the most able persons he can find, and he doesn't have to look in the parliament for them. In fact, you can't be a parliamentarian and still be a member of the executive. So you separate those two, like they do in the States. Not that the States is perfect, but that separation that seems to occur in the United States is better for us.
True, I agree with you 100%. All right, let me just alert our folks, those of you are now joining us, thank you for joining us. We will be, as I said before, having the views of Beverly Sinclair in just a bit, just around the 5 o'clock hour, who will be putting into better perspective for us what went down last night, that is in Grenada, where Dr. Keith Mitchell announced the election date, that is June 23rd, for the Grenadians to be going to the polls to choose or select the next government for the next 4 or 5 years. Also, we most likely will be having as well another voice from Grenada. Let us hope that other voice comes in or chimes there sometime later so that she too can be part of the conversation as well. But for sure, we will be having a voice around the 5 o'clock hour from Grenada so that we could, we the listeners out there can have a much better idea, and viewers as well, as to what is going on in our region. It is now St. Kitts and Nevis' turn. Dwyer is on the ball as we speak. In just a bit, someone from Grenada will be representing here so that we can better understand what is going on there as well. Read their June 23rd polling day. Please, folks, join us here with your comments, your suggestions in the live as well, because you too, we treasure your company each and every Sunday so that we can ask the questions on your behalf right here. Dwyer, just before we move ahead in terms of the discussion, someone is asking a very important question here, sir. Will Denzel, okay, let me just read it for you. Will Denzel Douglas be allowed to contest the elections in St. Kitts and Nevis since he holds dual citizenship? Can you say anything about that, sir?
He doesn't hold dual citizenship. The Dominica passport was returned quite a while ago. So the premise of the question is incorrect. And so I respectfully suggest to the person asking it that that is not correct.
Okay, so as we speak, he's no longer a dual citizen.
No, he's not a citizen of Dominica. If he has citizenship elsewhere, I have no idea about it. But I know if the reference is to the Dominica passport, then he relinquished that. Okay. But he is a candidate in the election. He's not the leader of the Labour Party. The Labour Party restructured its constitution, restructured its administrative arrangements. They had democratic elections. He chose not to run in those elections. The new leader of the Labour Party is a man called Dr. Terence Drew, who's a young, very brilliant doctor. he has two deputy leaders, Dr. Jeffrey Hanley, who is an educator, and Mr. Conris Maynard, who is an engineer, and a team of young and very able professionals. And the veteran on the team is Dr. Douglas, who was elected in a democratic process to be the representative for his area. So he will not lead. And in the event that anything happens to the leader, there are two deputies. So his time as the prime minister of this country is finished. However, he has a lot of experience and he can assist and provide them with the benefit of his experience in the government and generally.
In terms of the term that any one prime minister can serve, it is being touted about in Dominica, and I would want to think too in St. Kitts and Nevis as well, Dwyer. What is your position? What is your perspective re term limits for anyone being at the helm?
I support term limits, and the new leader of the Labour Party, in fact, Dr. Drew, said so publicly a couple of days ago that he is personally, if the people honor him by electing him to serve them as a leader, well, electing him to serve, then he will take 2 terms because he understands the stresses and the demands of the job, and he believes that after 2 terms, it would be appropriate to pass it on to someone else so he can move on to the next phase of his life. I would hope that if they are fortunate to be elected, they will put that into the Constitution and seek the support of the opposition in that. Because I do believe that although some people who argue against that use the rationale that we have such small populations, why don't leave the choice to the people? Why not leave the choice to the people? But we have also had the experience in these countries of people, if you will, outlasting their very best and maybe becoming smug and complacent,
okay,
and in some instances arrogant and corrupt. And this would be one way of controlling that. Of course, controlling means also you have to consider introducing recall, altering your constitution so that it is not as difficult to revoke a prime minister's position. For example, the case we had here, you have 9 people in the cabinet. 6 of them went to the governor and said, we don't support this man anymore. I believe the Constitution should have had a provision. You see, what is in England, Lofty,
yeah,
the conventions and the graciousness of office. If Prime Minister Boris Johnson, the majority of his cabinet members say, look, we have no more confidence in you, he would resign. We don't do that around here because we're short on graciousness and the observance of conventions. So that is something that I think, and other things to bring under greater control the widespread and, in my view, excessive powers that prime ministers have under our constitutions. Term limits for sure.
Term limits for sure. So Dwyer, there's a lot of persons out there. Just before, that's my last punch on you here in terms of just before Paula comes in. If
last punch, you say?
Yeah,
okay.
Political punch.
Uh-huh.
Political punch, as it were. There's some persons out there, Dwyer.
Yeah.
I've heard the views in Dominica that your man in St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Harris, he is a good man. He basically put the country back on track, really team unity arrangement. And so why the fuss? Why the fight? Why the bickering? Why the up in arms, as it were, with this man who is trying his very best for you guys in St. Kitts and Nevis?
He's trying his very best for who?
For the people. That's the sentiment.
Which people?
On the ground.
The sentiment on the ground?
Yes.
Well, that's not the sentiment on the ground in St. Kitts.
Mm-hmm.
So those people who hold that view, I would invite them to St. Kitts, spend 2 or 3 months and then they might get a dose of reality. When 6 members, 2/3 of your cabinet mutinies against you, are you going to tell me that the 2/3 of your cabinet are all wrong? And you are Archangel Michael, what, Gabriel? You are Archangel Gabriel. That is unfortunately not an accurate description of Dr. Harris. It makes these people who are saying so are painting a picture of a man who has come like a type of Joshua, a type of Moses, and has delivered us from the hands of the abyss, delivered us from the abyss. There's nothing further from the truth. We are further in the abyss than we ever were. We are further in the abyss. Politics is more transactional. Values have eroded, even going into the churches, where people of the cloth have compromised the pulpit on the altar of politics and diminished themselves and their congregations. Right now, as we speak, as we say here in St. Kitts, money is back in all over the place to encourage people to vote in a certain way. No, man, what did he do that was so great in this country? I mean, I've worked with this guy. I went into politics in 1992. We ran together in 93, 95, 2000, 2004. I retired from Parliament in 2010. I've known him for a long time. None of us is perfect. And I am one of the people. I'm not saying this out of any immodesty, but I am one of the persons who helped put Team Unity together. I wrote the PLP, his party. I wrote its constitution. I formed it. I set it up under law as an entity. I was a key part, if I may say so myself, because we thought we needed a change to greater transparency, good governance, integrity in public life, freedom of information, food safety and security, you know, a different approach to governance. And what we got was not just more of the same, but worse and on steroids. I've never found a person, and I thought, and others like myself thought, that coalescing with the people from these other parties, there would be inbuilt checks and balances. That did not take place. And before his coalition partners realized what happened, he had already closed them out. Closed them out. So that is a misperception, with the greatest of respect to those who share it. You know the old saying, I don't know if you have it in Dominica, come see me, and come live with me. Ain't the same thing. Let them come.
I know. All right, let me let Paula Celestine chime in here as the conversation continues. Paula, yes, good afternoon again.
Yes. Yeah, Lofty. Good afternoon to Mr. Dwyer. Again. I took note as you spoke, Dwyer. And when you spoke about the democratic process that Mr. Denzel Douglas went through, I'm here and I'm sitting and I'm saying this is one of the things that we've been speaking about in Dominica for a very long time. Because while we speak about electoral reform in Dominica, and a number of persons have been saying it, that if there are democratic process in our country, and even in cleaning the voters list, re-registration and all of that, persons who are already in the sitting government, if these persons are re-elected, like persons who genuinely and honestly vote for them again, that they would have accepted it. So when you spoke about Denzel Douglas and the democratic process that went through, I'm sitting here and I'm saying, this is what that really needs to be done in all countries, especially countries that are democratic countries. Because it doesn't mean that because he was in politics and then he left, or maybe he was at fault and then he returned, and people would say, okay, well, he was there, we do not want to vote for him, or he would just want to just come back and just impose himself on the people. It's like, yes, process, and it has been done in a democratic way. And I believe these are the very same things that we've been talking about here in Dominica. Also, when you spoke about the term limit, the opposition party have been speaking about that for a very long time as well. And many other Dominicans have been speaking about that. Because we believe when persons are sitting there in government, they are there for 3 terms and 4 terms, they get very comfortable, they tend to get very lazy, they are tired and they are weary, and it's time for them to go. Because they then come bankrupt of ideas, and they know people are just, they are not working anymore. Also, there was something else you spoke about where has to deal with the Constitution, and where persons need to change, where the Constitution should be changed, and persons need to change their habits and their culture and all of that. There's a lot of things that governments do to suit them. And like you rightly said, that election date should be fixed date. Because if a prime minister is sitting and only he knows the date for election, then it favors him. Whereas if everybody is expecting election to fall at a certain date, then persons, they do whatever that they have to do way in advance. But when a prime minister is the only person who knows the date when an election is going to take place, I think this is not even part of democracy as far as I look at it. This is just my opinion. So thank you very much, Mr. Dwyer, because the things that you are speaking about is like, to me, it's like Dominica. The things that you are saying to me is the very same thing that we are seeing happening here. And most of the Caribbean countries seems to follow the same trend. And who are to be blamed? The persons who are voting for these politicians, we all have to blame ourselves because we can make a difference. We should be demanding certain things. So when they go into parliament, they do not just go and say the ayes have it. They have to work in the interest and in the favor of the general public because these are the people who that keep voting for them all the time. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Hello? I'm not hearing. Are you hearing me? I'm not hearing you. You're on mute.
Yes, sorry. I was telling you, can go right on. I'm hearing you, yes.
No, I was just telling Paula, and please call me Dwyer.
No problem,
Paula.
no problem.
Yes.
Okay. Dwyer. Yeah, everybody's to blame. You see, the colonial experience was not one which sought to enlighten the masses of people. It was an oppressive arrangement. Divide and conquer. We have the vestiges of the colonial division already built into us from hundreds of years of it. And the very people we elected to be servants, actually we are electing them to be kings because they know that we are divided and they are not committed to change that an attitude that we have and that mentality. Our education system, our socialization system, our economic system, and on and on and on. Because if we are enlightened as a mass of people, then 99% of those people who win political office would never win it. So they prefer to keep us in the dark and they do as they like. And that is why it has to come from the people. It has to come from the people. If we are lucky and we have 1 or 2 political leaders who are seeing it that way, then we have to season it. But in any case, we the people the activists, the Loftus Durans and so forth, and yourself and others, Beverly, we have to do it. We have to tell the people, this is not good enough for you, and you have to fix it. It will only get worse, you know. If your vote is for sale, it means you are for sale. And I thought those days were done.
You thought master days were done?
I thought you couldn't buy people anymore.
It is still real and alive. Eh? It is still real and alive, especially where election or electioneering is concerned in our little jurisdiction. Let me get to a point there that Ezra Winston is saying. We touched on it earlier, but he's reinforcing something here about Dr. Harris. He says, from the outside, we hear promises and salary increases. We hear of stimulus for COVID. So this is how he is being judged from the outside. That is one comment from Mr. Winston.
You have people during the COVID who were put into isolation, left alone, basically. No attention paid to them for several weeks, no testing. Many of them were mothers who had no way of knowing how their children were being fed and taken care of. You have many, many, many people who were terminated from the private sector, while the government said it was not terminating people who refused to take the vaccine. They implicitly and tacitly supported the private sector doing it. A lot of people lost their work, unable to pay their mortgages. A lot of relationships broke up. A lot of people developed emotional disorder. Up to today, a number of people have not received severance pay from jobs that they were laid off as a result of the COVID. The protocols to get into St. Kitts even today are more onerous than maybe any other country in the Caribbean. So putting $1,000 a month in somebody's hand for 3 months, while taxi men are losing their vehicles, they're being foreclosed upon, and all of these terrible things are happening to people. Maybe Ezra is looking, and we know Ezra is a good man. Maybe Ezra is looking at the cosmetics of it, but the substance of it tells a completely different story. I know a lady, for example, she took the vaccine in order to keep a job. She started to develop blood clots. And the employer, though not legally bound to compensate her, has not come up with an offer out of compassion to help that lady for the rest of her life because she can't work.
Okay.
I mean, there are a number of cases that would demonstrate their lack of compassion and their cynicism, everything done in order to try to get votes, not to help people. You had a lot of private people going around raising money, making donations, helping these people in distress. Videos and audios were going around the place. A lot of disaffection. And they used the COVID to win the election. They locked down the country. The opposition could not have meetings, but they were having meetings in the Marriott every night, loaded with people. So again, that is a fairy tale view of the reality that exists in St. Kitts.
All right, thank you very much, Dwyer, for your thoughts re that matter here. I think now we have Beverly. Beverly joined us. Beverly, are you hearing me? Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you, Loftus. And it is so great to see Dwyer.
Hi, Beverly.
I feel like it's Christmas morning. Yes. And to your other guests, thanks for inviting me, Loftus.
All right, thank you very much, Beverly, for me kind of, taking you out on short notice rather, so that you could come here and chime in on the conversation, especially where we got news in the region where you guys are concerned in Grenada. Beverly, you're no stranger to us, but, just a brief introduction of yourself. Who is Beverly St. Clair?
A very concerned Caribbean woman, worked in the media, still work in the media for over 30 years, looking at issues across the region, discussing them with learned and enlightened folks like yourself and Guaya over the years, trying to reach our Caribbean people to awaken a level of consciousness that we'll see some change in the region. That's who I am. I have worked at every level in the media, from reporter to newsroom management, hosting shows, producing shows, and that is my strong background in media and communication. So in a nutshell, that is my professional side, I would say.
That's the professional side of Beverly.
And yes.
we well remember the gentleman we knew you for, Mr. Jerry George as well, huh?
Oh,
He shall
yes.
continue to rest in peace.
Jerry and I connected. I guess these things happened because we were on the same mission and we kept bumping into each other at various forums and meetings, and eventually we got together and started doing programs together. And it is out of that which Chat, which Dwyer is an integral part of. Chat was born, and we started doing this online program. Had a couple of radio stations with us in the early days. And, you know, this Caribbean connection, it was a dream of Jerry's, and we carry on the legacy and hope that one day a real Caribbean media connection with the powerful force that we always envisioned, respectfully hoping to see that come to reality one day.
Yes, indeed. All right, thank you, Bev, for coming on again. Bev, read the news last night where Dr. Mitchell basically announced that you guys will be going to the polls come June 23rd. What is the sentiments, the general sentiments you're hearing on the ground? Read that news.
General sentiments, everybody expected it to happen this year. The election, the 5-year term for this administration comes to an end next year, because the last election was in 2018, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, right? So the 5-year term would have ended next year if it hadn't been called now. So looking at it from the outside, you say there was really no pressure on the administration to call an election now, but because of the political climate, I guess the sitting prime minister of the country, who is Dr. Mitchell, thinks it's the right time to call the election, and so he has. The mood on the ground is that it will be a close election. The last 2 elections, the party which now forms the administration has won the 15 seats in the lower house. People in general are not expecting them to win 15 again, although for the most part, people are expecting that they will retain ownership of the administration, but with a reduced margin. We wait to see how that will play out. There have been so many expressions from so many different quarters. Just a few days ago, we saw one of the stalwarts, I would say, from the main opposition party. He crossed and went over to the NNP. So he left the NDC, which is the main opposition party, and has gone over to the NNP, and he was one of the real stalwarts in the NDC. He's gone over, and as usual, you know, when one party and go to another, they have things to say, you know, all the reasons why they leave and all the things that are not going right in the party, which is what he has done, true to form, what happens in the political arena. Because Loftus, Dwyer, and Paula, we haven't met. I see someone named Karen, but speaking with all of you and all our listeners, Loftus, I don't know when our politics is going to mature enough. First of all, for us to get away from this party politics thing, which hasn't done any good. And while it exists, I don't know when it's going to mature enough so that a person cannot leave a party without turning around and bad-mouthing and cussing the party and talking about all the things that going wrong in it. I mean, what good is that for? Does the politics always have to be so nasty and dirty and mudslinging and tearing down each other? People in the same country that are supposed to be working together to build the country. The political system is so divisive, so very divisive, that you hear more cussing and tearing down more than you hear of helping and building up. And that is why the party system is not good for us, and we just need to get to the day when we get past it and have a different kind of system of governance. But be that as it may, it is what we have now. The election has been called. The main opposition, NDC, which has been out in the wilderness, you would say, for the past 2 terms, having no seat in the parliament, seeking to get in. The party has a new political leader, which is a Mitchell, coincidentally. His name is Dipan Mitchell. He's a lawyer and not a well-known person on the ground, but his story is being told that he has been very supportive of Grenada in his own quiet way over the years. I can't speak directly to that. All I can speak to is that working in the media over the years, I've never heard him speak on public issues or come to the defense of Grenada or Grenadian people in any matter. So now that he's out there as the political leader of a major party, he has put forward some solutions on the part of his party as to what they will do should they form the government in terms of labor relations, how they would deal with that, the economy, how they would deal with that, and other major issues that the NDC would deal with and seek to transform if the party should form the next administration. So the fight is on. Word on the ground is that it will be close. We will look to see how close. The last election in 2018, there was a separation of 20,000 votes between the winner and the loser. No, not that many. There were 20,000 votes for the losing party and 30,000, and I'm speaking in rounded figures here, and maybe 30 for the party that won. So we're looking to see, all we can do, Loftus, is look to see how the polls will roll out on the 23rd of June. As usual, people are being encouraged to go and get registered now, which is always what happens at the 99th hour. And the excitement is on, the meetings will continue, and I hope for the sake of all of us that the mudslinging don't continue, because it just seeks to divide. There is no unity in casting your brother as somebody who is mean and nasty and not someone you should trust. No merit in that at all.
All right. Thank you very much, Bev. Bev, let me ask you a very straightforward question here. Do you guys have some form of identification when you guys go to the polls June 23rd? How do your polling agents or the persons who man the offices would be able to identify you guys?
Loftus, that is not a straightforward question to answer, because we have an electoral, the Representation of the People's Act says you must present your ID to vote. That is in the act. But then in a public meeting the other day, the leader of the governing party, who is the current prime minister of the country, says, once your name is on the list, nobody can stop you from vote. It is the voters list that count. It is not no ID. So there has been a lot of controversial statements out in the public about this ID thing. And the supervisor of elections, the man who is in charge of the electoral process, refused from coming out and saying, this is it or this is not it. But the act says you must have your ID to vote. The act says you must present your ID to vote. But the contravening and prevailing argument out there is, once your name is on the list, and once people can identify you, say, yes, you are Loftus Duran and you live down the road here, nobody can stop you from vote. And on the surface, that sounds like a nice argument, but Loftus, that's not what the law says.
But just to be clear, I know there are arguments for and against in terms of the identification of persons coming, but is there, as we speak, a card or a system in place to identify you guys? Is there one?
There is an ID card that is produced by the electoral office.
Okay.
So everybody who is registered is supposed to have an identification card. The whole system was thrown into confusion since 2020, when an announcement came out that the cards were expiring and everybody needed to go and renew their cards. It caused confusion because there is nothing in the act to talk about your card expiring and going to renew it. The act doesn't cover that. The act covers if your card is lost or damaged or other things. It doesn't say anything about renewing cards. But the electoral office instructed everybody that the cards were going to expire at a certain date and you had to go and get your card renewed. So that caused some confusion, and there is still some confusion because even now, some people have not gone to renew their cards because they're really not sure what to do because the Representation of the People Act does not speak clearly to it. So this is going to play into the election now, where many people are going to say they don't have ID because the ID wasn't renewed. There is no law to say they have to go renew ID, and all of that is going to cause confusion. And I'm sure as I'm sure today is Sunday, that somewhere along the line, somebody gonna say your name on the list. So you must be able to vote once your name on the list. Yeah, and this is where we cannot ever be confident and comfortable that we have a free and fair election. Because when the name is on the list, any name belongs to anybody and anybody go and vote with any name. And that is usually a problem.
Thanks, Bev. Thanks for clarifying that out for us here. Dwyer, what is the situation if you guys identification for voting?
You need to have, you see this? This is called a national ID card. That's my national ID card. Are you seeing it?
Yeah, just raise it up a bit higher, we can see it. We saw part of it. Right, okay, that's better. Raise it up. Right, that's better.
Okay, that's
Yes.
my national ID card. It also is renewable every 10 years. The reason for that is that the features of a person can change over 10 years. And so they want something that is visible. Our voters lists also have photo ID next to the name of each voter. You have to present identification, but if you unfortunately do not have your ID card and you have some other government ID, photo ID, passport, driver's license, stuff like that, then you have to be allowed to vote.
Dwyer, you made a point there a while ago. You said about the list. What about that list and an ID? Your electors list?
Photo, the photograph is next to the name. Now, having said that, during the last election, only the government agents had lists with photo ID, photographs next to it of the person. So Loftus Durant, you see his picture next to him. Paula Celestine, you'll see her picture and so forth. Only the opposition, only the government had those. I don't know what will obtain now, but I would have hoped that at least there would have been a leak, seeing that we don't have freedom of information and we're far away from the democratic governance that some people who don't know the reality on the ground want to give Timothy credit for. I don't know if the opposition will get lists with the photo ID of the voters on it, on them, but that exists.
Dwyer, as we on that note, re-elections, let me just apprise you, Beverly, and the listening public and viewing public of a situation that has been unfolding in Dominica for at least the past year and something, whereby a man from your country, Dwyer, that is Mr. Byron, Justice Byron.
Yeah.
The man who sits in the chair of Prime Minister, that is Roosevelt Skerrit in Dominica,
Mhm.
on his campaign trail, the last general elections, he promised the Dominican people that come 100 days after the election, he and his government would be doing something in terms of improving how we vote in Dominica as it pertains to some kind of reform where that is badly needed. As a result of that, he contracted, and when I say he, not the government, but he, Roosevelt Skerrit, single-handedly contracted Byron, that is Dennis Byron, the former president of the CCG from St. Kitts and Nevis, to basically make recommendations for Dominicans as to how we go ahead with our elections in the future. It has been some time. These recommendations are still pending. Byron gave the Dominican public his word that September last year, at least he would have come back and speak to the Dominican people as to where he's at with those recommendations. From September, it came to December. We are now in May of 2022. Up till now, the Dominican people, I don't know, Paula and I don't know, the Dominican people don't know whether Byron gave any report already or preliminary report, whatever it is, to the government or Roosevelt Skerrit. We don't know. What we do know is that he has not come back to the people and say anything. As to that situation, Dwyer, you being a man from St. Kitts and Nevis, he, Byron, is a Kittitian like yourself. What would you urge, or how would you urge Byron read that contractual arrangement that he entered in with the people of Dominica via Roosevelt Skerrit? What would you have to say to him in the interest of free and fair elections as to those recommendations, if any?
Well, he was contracted to do an analysis and to report to the person who contracted him. That's the Prime Minister of Dominica. He does not have the authority, unless given that authority, specifically by who engaged him, to share the contents of his report with the country. Now, I believe in transparency. So I believe that report should be shared by the country. But I can't say I blame Mr. Byron. You said he had said he'd release it. That's what you said, Lofty?
A matter of fact, Byron had some engagement with civil society here after the fact, after this contractual arrangement with him was made public. He, during some consultation with some NGOs here, told these NGOs that, hey, I will be reporting back to you guys soon as to, the recommendations. These recommendations, he said, will be made public. But I do get your point, Dwyer, that you pays the piper calls the tune, and so it would be quite fitting or in order that Roosevelt / the government would be privy to that information before the Dominican people. I understand that, but I'm going now based on Byron's utterances to the Dominican people, whereby he said at some point in time, which was a first deadline was September of last year, then it moved to December because of the COVID situations. We are now in May. And a lot of persons are suspecting that there may just be another snap election situation in the air without this recommendation. So hence my question to you, what would you urge him, he being a fellow man, a fellow countryman like yourself, in the interest of free and fair elections, as to how to, move on that matter?
Well, I don't know if his remit, I'm not trying to dodge the question, Lofty, but I don't know if his remit allows him, although you said he shared with civil society. I don't know how far his remit takes him, but it is not his duty on the face of it, given the practice and custom, to discuss that report in public unless otherwise authorized. We have similar situations here. before these guys got in 7 years ago. They said they were going to do a report on the electoral office. They closed down the electoral office for nearly a month after the 2015 election. We're still waiting. We were supposed to get an Ernst & Young report on the citizenship program, one aspect of it, the Sugar Industry Diversification Foundation aspect. We're still waiting for it. We're still waiting for the report on the stem cell nonsense on the herpes. As you respond to me, it seems as though you're saying, Dwyer, you could be saying the same thing about Dominica. The governments are not accountable. They are not. So I am not going to blame Mr. Byron for this. And I can't give him counsel. He wouldn't listen to me. I'm sure he wouldn't listen to me. I would tell him he needs to maybe have a different approach, but he wouldn't take my counsel.
You wouldn't?
No, man, no. Those guys operate at a certain level that's above my pay grade. He will say, okay, I hear what you said, Dwyer. We'll see how it goes. And I said, brush me off.
Dwyer, let me just, Bev, I'm coming to you right back in a while, but let me just finish up that point with Dwyer, our friend here. Dwyer, let me just put a little more detail on just where we are now so that you could get some kind of context as to where we are with Byron. As I said, September gone, December gone, nothing from him. We heard about a month ago that Roosevelt Skerritt came back to the Dominican people and said in the public domain on one of his programs that Byron or this situation demanded that another 75,000 EC dollars be given to Byron in order for him to complete that report. Oh. The previous contractual arrangement was 450,000 EC dollars. And so, there are certain matters, Dwyer, Bev, that it is not just black and white. There are certain gray areas that the Dominican people really trying to grapple with, as it were, as it pertains to that arrangement that Roosevelt Skerritt single-handedly went into Byron. And up till now, the goods cannot be gotten, as it were, where these recommendations or report is concerned. So I just wanted to kind of put that on the table so that you could have a better idea in terms of context.
Just to give a little bit more detail to the context, was there an explanation as to why that extra 75,000 was required?
I cannot speak to the details as to why the 75,000. Roosevelt Skerritt, normally, I'll be straight up with you, Dwyer, I'll be straight up with the Dominican people. Normally, when Roosevelt is on his Anu Pali program, there's a program in Dominica that called Anu Pali, meaning let us talk. Right. I personally don't listen to that program. But what happens, sometimes what goes on that program, it normally makes headline news or news on the various radio stations. So that is where I will get an opportunity or some time to kind of, in passing, hear what went on there. So that made news in terms of the $75,000 that arrangement was calling for Byron to sort of complete or bring the findings forward or whatever it is. But for sure, there is another demand for 75,000. As to the details of it, as I said, I don't know the details, but for sure there's a 75,000.
Consultants come at a high price, but you have to have the goods delivered. You have to have the goods delivered.
Yeah. Let me just move across. Bev, what are some of your thoughts based on what you just heard before we take some comments from the public?
Well, that thought led me just to recall that Sir Byron is currently sitting on a committee in Grenada to decide on how public servants should be paid their pensions following a court ruling which said public servants are constitutionally due their pension, which has been held up from them since around 1980, somewhere in the late 80s. They have not been paid any pension due to some law which was made under the Grenada Revolution government, but that law has now been ruled by the court to be unconstitutional, and the public servants are due their pensions. Some have already retired, some have unfortunately passed away already, but they are due and they have to be paid. So the Prime Minister proceeded to set up a committee to deal with how the payments should be handled, and Sir Byron is a member of that committee. So he's very busy, Loftus and Dwyer, very busy across the region. And I am quite disturbed, actually, that he was called to run this one-man commission on electoral reform in Dominica. And someone who comes with the accolades of being former president of the CCJ, etc., has not been able to deliver a report which was promised. It was promised. I read about it. I know that even a survey was put in place to get some feedback on on the whole process and everything that was happening. And everything just like fizzled out. There was nothing. And I am very, very concerned when people are given jobs to do, especially jobs that they are supposed to report, or where it is promised that they will report to the nation, and there is no report. But it's like I said earlier, there is no accountability. The people who sit in seats of authority, they do what they want because they can, and there is no way to hold them accountable and to get answers. And it continues.
Yes, indeed. Let me just kind of sort of clarify. Thanks, Bev. Thanks for your input here. There's a very avid listener of the Anupale program in Dominica, Beverly and Dwyer.
Mhm.
And he's saying here, that is Mr. Bernard Aline. He's saying here, and I would want to correct the record just in case Bernard is right. And I would want to go with his word versus mine because he's an avid listener of that program. He says here, where is it? Skerrit said that he signed approval to the tune of 72,000 US. So I mentioned EC before, so it is US dollars to be paid to a draft person to draft documentation related to the electoral process. He went on to say he did not explain what is it that the draft person is actually drafting. So correction here, made correction from Mr. Bernard Aline, who, as I said, is an avid listener of that program. So it is not 75,000 EC, based on Bernard's word, it is 72,000 US dollars. As to why those monies are for, then, I'll have to seek some clarification so I can finish you guys with that information. But it is monies, and more monies.
And nothing to show for it.
Nothing.
Or not just nothing to show, but no action to follow up with the recommendations, no discussion with the public. So we got the report. We cannot divulge everything because of, you may have to do some redaction because of national security matters. I don't know, maybe not. But you share it with the public, it's their money you're using. You cannot use these things. Again, you see, this is where excesses can be engaged upon by people who occupy the office of Prime Minister. There is too much power. What we have here are constitutional prime ministerial dictatorships. And that is why you need a constitutional change to bring that to order. They have too much power. And most of them do not have the acumen or the temperament to handle such power. The greater the power in your possession, the greater should be your humility. We learned that from Jesus Christ. The greater you must be disposed to forgive and to be forgiven.
Indeed.
And all of those, yeah.
It also says there, to whom much is given, much is required.
Not just required, but yeah, expected, yes.
True.
So we really have a lot of people occupying these positions. and not only prime ministerial, but other ministerial and other positions, who can win a seat, which of course is no prerequisite to running a ministry or a country successfully. Because I have known in my time, I am not genius. I don't profess to be any outstanding performer as a minister. But I have met in my time some people traveling the region and the world who are ministers of government. And the credential they have is that they were elected because they are hopeless. They don't have the gravitas for it. I mean, boy, I tell you, we really, and it all boils down to the people again. The people are not as enlightened as they ought to be. And the leaders like it that way. The leaders like it that way.
Well, it seems they're having a field day.
Well, you know, we also say in St. Kitts, moonlight run till they catch it. Moonlight run till they catch it.
Okay.
The people will reach a point, hopefully sooner rather than later. This is why Beverly and you and I agitate and others. Hopefully sooner rather than later, when they realize that this is not in their best interest. If a politician comes and gives you $20,000 to vote for him or her, you have to understand that they give you the $20,000, which more than likely is your money, which they managed to get in their hands through nefarious ways. And once you give them your vote, that transaction, that deal is completed. They owe you nothing. Maybe next time you will vote for them. And a lot of our people, I don't know if it's a multitude, but too many of our people, already cynical and skeptical about the politics, already believing that one is no better than the other, are willing to take money and say, okay, $20,000, I'll vote for you. I don't care, because it doesn't make any difference. And this is where we have to tell the people. If you could, I dropped an asthma patient into town a couple of days ago, 25-year-old mother of one. I was driving into town. She's asthmatic like I am. Went to the hospital 2 weeks ago with an asthma attack, and she had to wait for over an hour to be nebulized. But a lot of our people seem to be comfortable with the notion that they could get $10,000 to vote, which if you stretch that over 5 years is $2,000 a year, or maybe $5 a day. I don't know how well you could do on that. But when their mother or their child is sick and they go to the hospital, they can't get basic things that they need, not in order just to be made well, but in order to live. So clearly we have become transactional, and the philosophies of the past, the values that were inculcated in generations like mine and younger people like Beverly and you all, and older ones than myself, are being lost to the Western lifestyle, which is instant gratification, materialism, greed, and to hell with the rest of you. And the politicians feast on that. You're going to tell me any one of these politicians who, between the start and the end of an election, give out $1 million or $2 million, each of them. You think any of that is his money? I don't think so. So, you know, all of these, going back to the point of the studies and the investigations and so, most of those things you will not see the light of day unless you get a change of government, and not just a change of government, but a change to an administration which really has the people's interests at heart and which is committed to efficient governance. I hope we have oppositions in the region who are possessed of those qualities.
Sure. Bev, we'll come to you in just a while, but Paula has a burning situation that she wants to talk to Dwyer about before he gets back to you. Yes, go right ahead.
Yes, Dwyer and Beverly. This question is for both of you. Both St. Kitts and Grenada has voters ID card. And I guess also electoral reform because the process for voters ID card also.
You know, in the voters list, that kind of thing. I want to ask, how long did it take before you all would have this rectified? Because like a lot of the Caribbean countries, they never had voters ID card before. So how long did it take before you all or the government could have issued voter ID cards? And the other question, how much did it cost both of your countries to have voters ID cards? And my last question, this one is for you, Dwyer. What would you say to a country where the government have been speaking about voters ID card or electoral reform? What would you say to the nation of a country if, and I'm speaking directly to Dominica now, if government of Dominica would decide to call a snap election without giving the people what they've been asking for a number of years, what would your advice be to the nation?
I'll yield to Beverly.
Sure, sorry. I had to unmute there. Question of when voters ID card was implemented in Grenada. That date I don't know off the top of my head, but I know for sure it's been in place for the last 2 election cycles. That would be 2013 and 2008. The card system had already been in place for those elections. The cost again to have this implemented, can't give you a cost. That is something I'd have to go and look back up to give you a cost, because all of that happens under the Parliamentary Elections Office. So I would have to do some looking all up to get you even an approximate cost for implementation of the voter ID cards. We know it's not cheap. It's not something which is done cheaply, and the cost will no doubt run into millions of dollars to provide voter ID cards for the 70,000 people which are on the voters list, currently on the voters list. So that is how I can answer those questions which you posed.
Bev, just before you move across, I think one of the most succinct point Paula was getting at is that when the process by you guys started in Grenada, how long did that process take? Any idea?
No, I don't have. Up to the time of implementation, consultations, discussions, everything may have been going on 2, 3, 4 years before it actually came to fruition, or maybe even longer. But it was not a quick process. It's not like it was decided in a year or 2. It certainly took some time to get there.
So based on what you're saying, Bev, we can comfortably say it took less than 10 years.
Yes, it took less than 10 years.
Okay, all right, cool. Yeah, you can continue. Thanks.
Right. So, yes, I was just wrapping up to say that's the information I could give you, speaking to you now about how long it took, the cost, and the use of the cards.
All right, thank you very much. Dwyer, any thoughts, really, questions that Paula posed, really, timing of the cards issued in St. Kitts and Nevis, and also how much it costs you guys to get those cards?
First, on the cost, I can't give you a number.
Yeah, just an idea, just a ballpark figure, an idea.
Well, I don't, because I was in cabinet at the time, I remember the government had engaged David Thompson, the late Prime Minister of Barbados. This is before he became the Prime Minister. And these voter ID cards were introduced for the 2010 elections. So they're being used 2010, 2015, 2020. This will be their fourth use. It took, David, I think, did his consultations with us, Mr. Thompson, around 2007. And by 2010, we had voter ID cards. As I said, I can't recall the cost, but even if there is a cost, Lofty and Paula, I don't see anything wrong with a cost because the government has to incur the cost, although it doesn't have to be a cost to it. And we use them as national IDs, not just for voting. That is why any government picture ID can be used. As to the question relating to Dominica, what would I suggest to a people who want voter ID and may go into the next election with no voter ID? Agitate for it. Agitate for it. You all have marches in Dominica every Wednesday, don't you? Or that has stopped?
No, we do.
Agitate for that. Agitate for that. Get the social and economic partners off their behinds. Get them off their behinds and get them to understand that if you have a country which has institutionalized good governance practices, legislation, practices, and its leaders are people of integrity, you're going to attract enormously more investment and investment from decent people than you are attracting now. It is in the interest of all of the people to get it right. So you must get as close to all of the people as you can. Get them on the street with placards. If you don't succeed in getting that done by the next election, work hard and try to win and then make it a reality. That's the best answer I could give you, Paula.
Indeed, and that work that you spoke of, Dwyer, is led by your brother, Arthur Mater.
Well, you know, Arthur is an old soldier.
Yes.
He will die on the battlefield. Hopefully 100 years from now.
Indeed. Yes, Paula, you can go right ahead. All right, Paula healed to me a while ago. Bev, let me just come back to you here and ask you, what are some of the main issues that persons in Grenada have with the ruling party? We know that he called the date last night so that you guys can go to the polls on the 23rd of June, but what are some of the main items on the agenda where the general population is concerned, especially those that are not sympathetic to Mr. Mitchell and his party? What is the talk on the ground?
For those who are not sympathetic, the talk on the ground surrounds accountability in government. It surrounds abuses of state resources and state power, victimization of people who have opposing views to whatever, in this sense, the party holds or what the government holds. Because unfortunately, in our political system, an opposing view makes you an enemy. So anyone who has opposing views is automatically an enemy of the state. You know, everyone is supposed to fall lockstep and not have a mind of their own to think and say anything different. So on the ground, I would say those are the departing sentiments: accountability, abuse, victimization, and of course, the unfair distribution of state resources, where, according to people on the ground, some people benefit from the resources of the state and others don't. And that causes a growing list of dependent people, where the poor people list get longer every year and the middle class gets further eroded every year. So on the ground, those are some of the sentiments that you will hear over and over from people who do not support the party, or people who just think Dr. Keith Mitchell should leave the stage now. He's been there quite a number of years, been the longest serving prime minister of Grenada, and there are folks who just believe he's just been there too long and it's time for him to go.
Someone is writing on the chat as well, Bev, basically trying to complement what you're saying. Don't forget about the bad healthcare system, the roads, etc.
Right. So
are these issues as well?
Those are definitely issues as well, especially the healthcare system, because there are so many experiences, bad experiences within the system and complaints about the system, and you don't see that concerted effort to make major changes that will impact the ordinary people. We talk about national health insurance, which is a different topic that I have my own views on. But the fact is, the national health insurance was promised. That discussion has fizzled out. Several dates were given when it could be implemented. It hasn't happened up to now. So these are things that the public look on and get discouraged, because no steps are being taken to really improve and make more accessible certain healthcare needs for the general public, the ordinary people. And healthcare is expensive, it's very expensive. So a critical look has to be taken on how it's going to be handled to benefit the ordinary people.
So it seems as if the Caribbean basically is the same thread running across the Caribbean with bad governance, where bad governance is concerned, huh?
It is, and when we have done Chat for a while, and one thing we have discovered is that our islands have similar problems in similar areas, and there can be similar solutions if only the people would get together and make these solutions happen.
I'm also hearing as well, Bev, that there's some persons or organizations sympathetic to the opposition cause or causes in Grenada, that there's some letter that will be going out to the governor. You guys have a governor general over there, Bev?
Yes, we do. We have a governor general.
Good. So I'm hearing some letter will be going out to the governor general tomorrow, citing that in principle that the electoral commission, it's not ready for that date in June when the people are supposed to be going to the polls.
Well,
that's what I'm hearing.
If the parliamentary elections office believe it will not be ready for June 23rd, then it has to say so. Despite the fact that a date is announced, if the manager of the process foresees problems, certainly now is the time to come out and say, hold a second, Dr. Mitchell, you have announced this date, but we're not in a position to deliver on that date. They would have to do that. We've never seen that happen anywhere across the Caribbean before. This would certainly be a history-making moment. But if they're not ready, and they're brave enough to say so, rather than deliver some substandard election on the 23rd, they should.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Bev, I took note of a comment that you made earlier when you were presenting, when you're on the floor, in that you said that based on what you're hearing on the ground, that this time the results may be a bit closer. We recall that it was a clean sweep the last time?
Last two times.
Last two times. So what is so different this time around?
That is just the sentiments I'm getting off the ground, that, it may be different. Okay. On the day when people go out to vote, that is when the story is told. But so far, hearing from the pundits, hearing from the political analysts, they are saying that it may not be a 15-0 this time, but they're still foreseeing a win for the incumbent.
Okay. They're still foreseeing a win for the incumbent. And Mr. Mitchell would have been in government. Let's say he wins this time around. How long he would have been there?
Oh gosh. Longer than most of the people, a lot of the people listening to you have been alive.
At least that would be his fourth term?
This would be his third consecutive term.
Okay.
As Prime Minister, third consecutive as Prime Minister, but he has served before, 2 terms before, but not consecutive as Prime Minister. So it would be the 5th time that he would be serving as Prime Minister of Grenada. And those listening can correct me if those figures are incorrect, but I think it would be his 5th time as Prime Minister of Grenada. Should his party be victorious at the polls again?
Yes, indeed. Well, we have a totally different, thank you, Bev. Thank you for your comments here. We have a totally different situation in St. Kitts and Nevis that is playing out itself. There was a comment, Brother Dwyer, that I wanted to ask you. Someone made a comment on the chat. I think that comment came from Didi Easter. I'm now trying to rip it up to ask you that comment. Once it comes alive, I will ask you. But same question to you, Dwyer. In terms of the sentiments on the ground, we know that you guys have a different setup in terms of how the politics is playing out itself. How do you see, Dwyer? I hope you have a crystal ball. How do you see that thing playing out?
Okay, we have 8 seats in St. Kitts. There are 3 seats in Nevis. Okay?
Yes.
In Nevis, presently, the Concerned Citizens Movement, which is led by Mark Brantley, who is also the Premier of Nevis, has 3 seats in the federal parliament, and it is anticipated that they will retain those 3.
Okay.
At least 2. Okay? Just for your information, the opposition Nevis Reformation Party over in Nevis is led by a female, and most of its leaders are female. In St. Kitts, you have 3 parties: the People's Action Movement, which presently has 4 seats in the parliament; the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party, which presently has 2, and the People's Labour Party, which has 2. I am thinking, I have not seen any empirical formula for any studies done over the last 30 days or so, but I am sensing a quiet outrage among many people who are waiting to vent their feelings behind the curtain in the polling stations. And I believe that out of this mess that we have here, the St. Kitts Nevis Labour Party may be best positioned to get the most seats of any party, maybe enough to form a government on its own, which would be 6 seats. The leader is, however, saying, now that's just speculation on my part, or what I'm reading, the leader is saying that even if his party does win a majority on its own, he's going to embrace the other parties because, I'm paraphrasing him, he's not a supporter of the practice of winner takes all. That said, we have to await the reality. But from my experience in politics, those who you have to watch most are those who are least quiet. And we have people, as I said, who I believe are living lives of daily outrage with the nonsense that is being promulgated by and on behalf of the Prime Minister and his supporters.
Okay.
So
All right,
whether it's the Labour Party by itself, or they could form partnerships with the People's Action Movement and the CCM. The leader of the Labour Party has made it very clear that he will speak with anybody except Timothy Harris.
Wow.
None of the parties and their leaders want anything to do with Timothy Harris.
Matter of fact, this afternoon's program, Brother Sean Richards, as the leader of the PAM, right? He was supposed to be here with us this afternoon as a guest, but unfortunately he could not make it. So we have since then rescheduled that outing, as it were, with him. So we look forward to that discussion with Brother Richards. But a question for you, Dwyer, and it's coming from one called Viva Mamu on the live. He says here, is the issue of two-term limit in office, which was supported by the current PM of St. Kitts, but who now desires a third term, part of the disagreement, within the unity government in St. Kitts?
Yes. Yes, that was one of many issues. One of many. Yes, it was.
Okay, it was. All right, that's the question I really wanted to ask you earlier from one called Didi Easter. She says, Denzel Douglas is a classic example why the political rules must be reviewed. There should be measures in place to ensure politicians who are forced out of office for gross misconduct, again, that is coming from Didi Easter, are banned from running from office for a period of 10 years. Your response, Dwyer, to that?
Well, I don't know if he was forced out of office because of any misconduct. I don't think there was any official event that took place or any official judgment.
But just a question, Dwyer, just a question to you as you continue, just a question. And that is just for clarity. Didn't Mr. Douglas say on numerous occasions that he was not a holder of that passport from Dominica?
He said so originally, then he later admitted it, yes.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a fact.
So I guess hence Didi Easter's point now.
What's the point?
Someone like him saying one thing, and when the truth comes out, it is something else. In her term or in her mind, that may be gross enough to effect a 10-year ban.
Well, that's her opinion, and I respect it. But we must remember that politicians are human beings like us. They are. You remember Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky?
I remember.
He said he had no relationship with her. The George Bush, the father, who Clinton defeated in an election, George Bush said when he was running for the presidency, read my lips, no more taxes. They voted for him and he introduced taxes. So all of us have fallen short of the glory. I'm not defending Dr. Douglas. I left his cabinet. I thought he should have passed the baton back then. The fact of the matter is that he has passed the baton. The party had an election. It has a new leader. And his constituency, as per the Constitution, elected him to contest the election on their behalf. So, while I believe that people must face consequences, he has already faced consequences. He's no longer the leader. Not that his views, his perspectives are not important. They are. Okay. He has a lot of experience, but he's been demoted. His government lost, his administration lost the 2015 election, and his party lost the 2020 election. And were it not for these antics that are going on within this government and the serious fallout that has taken place, Dr. Douglas's party would have been out of government for 10 years because the next due date is 2025. So I don't think he can be faulted for the confusion and misgivings within the team. They don't call it Team Unity anymore. They call it Team Timothy.
Team Timothy.
Because there's no unity in it. And it's not a team either. It's all
Okay.
about Timothy, yeah. Tim Timothy, not team, but Tim Timothy.
Oh, Team Timothy. Okay, okay.
So I take Diddy Easter's point, but I think Dr. Douglas has paid the political price for what he has done. These guys had said they will have inquiry, they'll do what and so forth. They didn't do anything. In fact, Douglas is laughing now, not at them, not in derision, but look what has befallen them. They did nothing at all to say to the public, these are the wrongs that we said he did. Some of them went over the cliff and require proper attention, whether by the DPP or whoever. None of that has happened. In the meantime, corruption is taking place in St. Kitts on steroids. It's never been as bad as it is.
I remember clearly well as we speak on that. Bev, I'm coming back to you in just a bit. Read that situation, Dwyer, where he was accosted or arrested in some part in the UK.
Yeah.
With some untold amount of cash.
Yeah, he was not arrested.
Mhm.
He was at Gatwick Airport with a significant amount of cash. The England authorities took the cash and nothing has come of the matter. He had cash on him which he didn't declare, so they took it.
Okay.
If you enter the United States with in excess of $10,000 without declaring it,
Mhm.
they will do the same thing. Now, I'm not saying it was a smart thing. And as I said very clearly, I want to be clear. I'm not defending him. I'm not here to defend him. But I'm just telling you, if you go to an airport and you're apprehended with more than a certain amount of cash which you haven't declared, they're going to take it from you. Maybe that cash has been used to buy some medical equipment for a British hospital, which is a good thing. Maybe they should take some of it and make reparations to these countries. Well, and that's another discussion again, you know? But does that matter?
I took note as well, Dwyer. I took note as well when you said earlier that in terms of he becoming prime minister, that is it for Denzel. And you say that if a level of certainty.
Yes.
Why?
He will not be prime. There's no pathway to the prime ministership for him.
Okay.
Not realistically. Not realistically. And he knows it, and he's come to terms with these things. He's a very charismatic, very bright, very energetic guy, and he has something to offer. Like the rest of us, he's a sinner. He's a sinner, but he led the country through some very difficult times. Between 95 and 2000, we were struck with women, nearly 4 hurricanes. We had a flood. We had the Montserrat volcano. We had no end of trouble. We had a sugar industry that was costing the government nearly $40 million a year just to keep it afloat. It was a social service industry, a job agency. We inherited a lot of difficulties. And with all of his faults in his time, we transformed the economy, built a lot of infrastructure, a lot. Created a lot of homes for people. I remember for Carifesta alone, which was held in 2000, we built 132 homes in 3 months. We built thousands of homes in this little country. You know, a lot of people went off to Cuba, the previous administration, prior to ours. They were not interested in our people going to Cuba on scholarships. A flood of young people went to Cuba under Douglas's leadership. He was the spokesman for HIV in the Caribbean. And along with the Clinton Foundation, did a lot of things. So all of us are sinners lofty. There's certain things that disqualify you from certain offices. There's no official decision anywhere presently existing that would disbar him from seeking office.
Okay.
And his party has said, we want you to run. And I believe he will transition out in good time to younger people, because there are a number of young people who can take his position from his constituency, young able people, just like there is all over St. Kitts and Dominica too.
Yeah.
So they're being nurtured, you know?
True. All right, Dwyer, thank you for your comments. We are seeing that the time is slowly but surely winding down on us. Let me see if I could slide in some more comments here. Bev, I will let you take a shot at this one. Tara Schilling for the scene here. The constitution in all the Caribbean should be revamped. There should be laws put in place that the electoral checks and balances. The PM alone, she says, cannot and should not control the public's purse. Your thought, read that comment there.
I fully agree with Tara, but beyond revamping the Constitution, at least it would be part and parcel of revamping the Constitution, would be putting in place a system of governance that can work for our small states with 40,000 and 50,000 and 60,000 and 100,000 people. The system that we currently have in place just cannot work. It puts too much power in the hands of the Prime Minister. Prime Minister, by Constitution, literally controls the country. There is nothing that can be done without the Prime Minister saying it should be done, and the Constitution gives him that power. So that needs to change. That needs to change. That is not democracy in any shape or form. So an entire new system of governance, and those who have heard me speak over the years know that that is a sing-song that I come with all the time, but it's a serious issue, Lofty. We need a system of governance that can work for our small states. This bastardization of the Westminster system that we have adopted, it cannot work. Since independence, we've seen it that it cannot work, and it will not work in countries where there is a possibility that one party can win all the seats in parliament. That cannot work. And even if there is an opposition, the way the Constitution is written, the Prime Minister still has all the power in his hands to do whatever he wants to do in the country. So absolutely, I agree with Tara, that needs to change. The entire system needs to be thrown out, and we implement what can work for us.
All right, thank you, Bev. Let me just let Paula chime in there, because the time is slowly but surely coming to an end, so we have to wrap in just a while. Yes, Paula, go right ahead. Yes, go ahead.
Yes, Beverly. I'm not sure if you
can
can.
recall that Mr. Michel said that after he won the last election, that he would not be contesting the next election for Grenada. What's your take on that?
Something he said before. It's not just once that he said that. But of course, he's still there. He hasn't stepped down. And in defense of him not stepping down, he has said that there is no one to take over the leadership of his party. That's one thing he has said. And he has also said that the party does not want him to go, so he stays. So he has given various different types of excuses, I call them, for not stepping down. Because if he really wanted to, he would have, but he doesn't want to. So he's still there, and it remains to be seen if he will step down after this election. But personally, I'm not holding my breath. I think he'll just stay there. he will just stay there until, what do I say? Moon run Moonlight,
Did
did they catch it?
yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's how his term will come to an end. Anytime they catch him, then you stop. You stop.
Okay, yes, thanks, Bev. We're just going to take some comments from the live now as we are slowly but surely approaching the wind down hour. Margel Dura is writing, and any one of you folks can take that in terms of commenting. Margel Dura is writing, Michel, that is Keith Mitchell is talking about, Dr. Keith Mitchell, should have groomed someone to take over the NNP. It is all about power, he's saying. Any one of you guys want to take that on?
If you look at not just the NNP, but look at all of these political parties across the region and see if you see anyone in the position of political leader group anyone else to take over as leader. Nobody does. So it's not a question of building and establishing something that is going to carry on for the benefit of the country. I've said it before and I say it again. A political party is one of the most undemocratic systems that we can find. And yet still, we put these parties to govern our administration and expect to have a democratic functioning country run by a non-democratic organization. Cannot happen, will not happen, you know? So there is no grooming of nobody to take over. It's a power struggle and it's a power play. And except something fundamentally happens to change that, that is what we're living with right now.
Wow. Sad but true, huh?
Sad but true.
David Joseph is writing, how about legislation? Because power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. These present leaders have no principles and will not honor the very stance they have taken personally. He says Timothy Harris is a prime example of his statement. Brother Dwyer?
Well, you know, it makes me think aloud. We're talking about improving our constitution and other legal machinery by which we govern our affairs, right?
Yeah.
The constitutions we have are defective. We can have much better constitutions. But I'll tell you this, we need much better people to govern, because a defective constitution in the hands of a great leader will yield better results for the people of a country than the greatest constitution in the world in the hands of a rogue government. It's not so much the tool, although the tool is critically important. It's the tradesman. It's who is handling the tool. So we need to fix our constitutions, but we the people need to make better selections, have better judgment when we are electing our leaders.
True. Thank you very much, Dwyer. Janice Jacques has wrote here, but he has a contractor. I guess that's when we're on the point of Dennis Byron. She writes, but he has a contractual obligation to the people because it was the people's $500,000 that paid him and not Roosevelt. You sort of answered that earlier, Dwyer, in terms of the contents of the contractual arrangement. So we'll pass on that one in the interest of time here. Let me see. Tara again is writing, there should be no election without electoral reform. Dominica, do not repeat what happened in 2019.
So if you don't have an election, what Tara is complaining of will continue and get worse. You have to have elections. You can't prevent, if you don't have elections. If you see a mouse hanging around your cheese, and you don't try to put a rat trap there, what do you think will happen to your cheese? No cheese gonna be left. You have to have elections, man. I know how she feels, but you have to have elections, Tara.
Even if Dwyer, the playing field is that uneven.
But you see, the world is watching. and it helps to increase people's consciousness. Suffering and difficulty builds commitment and builds character. And while these little demagogues we have in the region enjoy themselves, they need to understand that bigger powers are watching and people's patience is wearing thin. You see what happened to the leader of the BVI? If he's guilty of anything, you think it's only 3 weeks ago that he became involved or culpable? They choose when to pounce, and they pounce when they're ready. And they'll do what they can to get you ejected from office. They will do that. They're known to do it. But you can't give up as a Dominican on elections. You can't just say, we're not going to have an election until something happens. So what you're going to do if you boycott the elections? If you have something to do to make sure that you can agitate for change, that's fine. But doing nothing, to me, I don't buy that one.
Yes, indeed. All right. Point taken here, brother. Ezra Winston is writing here in terms of some more comments coming our way. I am in no way a supporter of Tim, that is Timothy Harris. All I wanted to say is that he is now how some outside judge him, yeah?
Yeah.
But my personal view is that he is just as evil as the colonial masters. He killed Dominican freedom fighters. So he has innocent blood on his shoulders, like many of his OECS friends. That point that Brother Winston is talking about basically was a situation that occurred before the election in 2000 and
with the RSS
19 in Dominica. Yes, with the RSS situation.
Yeah.
Yes. Paul Patterson is writing here, asking some questions. Can you address the fact that recommendations by the Commonwealth, OAS, and CARICOM were all rejected by Mr. Skerritt, even when he invited them before the 2019 election? Also to Dwyer, the bringing in of the RSS, which you just spoke about a while ago, one day before the 2019 elections, to wreak fear among the population, reports that expired tear gas, rubber bullets, and even live rounds, were used. Isn't that abuse of power of the incumbency?
Yes, it is. And speaking about the OAS and CARICOM and all of these things, Beverly and you must be tired hearing me speak about it. Don't expect too much from these entities, okay? We're talking here now about bringing in observers for the election. Now, if you're bringing observers 2 days before the election, they're not going to see the atrocities that are taking place now.
True.
So they're going to see what they see and say the election seemed to be proceed fairly, and it seemed to express the voices and desires of the people, and they go on. And a lot of the people who are on these election observation teams are politicians, former politicians, would-be politicians, cronies, so that is an exercise in almost futility. If you want really to have good observing of the process, let them come in the day they dissolve the parliament.
True, I agree. Let's take a few more comments. I'll read one or two and then give Paula one or two, and then we'll let you guys go and enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening. Pat Corbett, brother Dwyer, is saying that he could listen to you all day. That is a brother from the north of Dominica. His name is Pat Corbett.
Thank you, sir.
James Cam is writing there as well. James Cam is saying Dominica's constitution came into question once the rogue Skerritt party forced themselves into power. Thank you, Dwyer. It's not the constitution, but the rogue in office of PM that has weakened the Dominica's, that has wrecked the Dominica's constitution. That is what he's saying here. Tara writes, because we are a democratic country. I guess she's responding to your response via read the elections, even if the playing fields are uneven. Royston Francis is writing, I didn't buy that one either. As to what you didn't buy, I cannot make the connection then. Oh, Francis. Marshall Lawrence is saying, Antigua led an opposition leader, had no election somewhere around 2000. And then the ruling.
No, they did not contest. It's not that they had no election, they didn't contest.
Okay. Let me just finish read the comment and then you will comment.
Sorry.
Yeah, he says, Antigua, that is from Marshall Lawrence. Antigua, he says, led by an opposition leader, had no election somewhere around 2000. And the then ruling administration was forced to submit and gave the people the reform they asked for the following elections. Your response, Dwyer?
I don't know what that reform was. And I don't recall there not being an election. It is eminently possible that the opposition boycotted the election. Okay. And that happens at times. But it still proceeds. And I don't know what electoral reform they introduced. Was it the residency requirements that you have to be residing in the country and in the constituency? Could be that. I don't know what else, but with the greatest of respect, and I love Antigua dearly, it's like a second home. Mm-hmm. If anybody in his or her right mind declares the Antigua political processes and arrangements to be exemplary, then I have to go and get my mind checked, because nothing could be further from the truth. And it's not that they're worse than anybody else. It's all of us are basket cases when it comes to electoral justice. All of us are basket cases. As we say again here in St. Kitts, Abba is no better than Saba. Peter no better than Paul. All of us are in the same basket.
True. David Joseph is writing here. I agree with Dwyer. These organizations, he's referring to the tripartite organization, OAS, CARICOM, and the Commonwealth. They are not worth the paper that their names are written on. That is what they comment from Mr. David Joseph, listening and watching the conversation.
Yeah, well, I mean, we discuss this and make we chat all the time, yes. Especially CARICOM. All of them have value and virtue, but they're not punching to their weight. They're good organizations to belong to, but you know, the world has been bureaucratized so much that there's a lot of chatter and very little action. And while the chatter is going on with these fellows diplomats in their fancy suits, flying first class, staying in top class hotels, chatting a bunch of crap, poor people suffering more. Poor people are suffering more.
Well, guys, Bev, I will give you the first knock in terms of your closing of final comments, Bev. And again, I want to thank you on behalf of the many listeners and viewers for me pulling you out your comfort zone at very short notice this afternoon. And as always, you always do an excellent job. But just before you give your closing comments, though, there's one of your ardent fans when we had Make We Chat going in the name of Celia King on the west coast of Dominica, Jimmy to be precise. She says she loved to see you this afternoon, and she just loved the energy that came from you this afternoon, Bev.
I thank her so much for that. Yes, and it was my pleasure to be here. I'm sorry I couldn't give you a live video. I didn't have time to prepare for a live video, so I am enjoying seeing Dwyer, and I'm really sorry I couldn't return the favor this evening, but maybe another time.
Maybe another time.
My closing comments would just be that I continue to agitate for a better form of governance that can work for us in our small states. As a people, we deserve better. And I am really, really hoping, praying, and doing everything I can for my people to wake up and realize that they deserve better. You know, and the only way that is going to happen is if we make the demands, we make the moves, we do what is necessary. Most of our small states require a 2/3 majority in some way, shape, or form to make changes in the Constitution. And if that majority of our people decide that this is what we want, this is the way it's gonna go, we can change that Constitution and have a better system for ourselves. But we have to first recognize that we deserve better and we have it in our hands to do what can be done to give us better. So that is where I would pause for this evening, Loftus. Thanks for inviting me. It was a pleasure being here.
All right, thank you, Bev. Well, from Civic Vibes and Bev, we want to have you as our eyes and ears on the ground in Grenada, really developing situation as to your election. So please feel free to reach out and give us the updates as it becomes available.
Absolutely will share.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. All right, Dwyer, over to you. Final comments,
Okay.
sir.
I'll be brief. I think I've spoken more than enough for the day. Thank you guys for having me. It's really been a pleasure having a chat with Beverly. I miss Beverly. We miss Beverly greatly. I believe I can take the liberty of speaking on your behalf with regard to that. She's always a ray of wisdom and graciousness for us. And so she has helped make my day as well. I want to thank your viewers and listeners, those who participated and those who didn't. And I want to encourage them, and you and all of us, we have to keep agitating. The future has to be better than the present. And we cannot depend on those who have it like it is to make it better. We have to change it. And we means all of us. Everybody has to be an activist for better. Thanks again for having me. And until next time, God bless.
All right, indeed. Let me just give Paula the last knock. The last knock, just to thank you guys from Civic Vibes End before you make your move out. Paula, yes, go on. Go right now.
Yes, I want to say thank you to Beverly and thank you, Mr. Dwyer, although you always say call you Dwyer. Thank you very much for such very important program this afternoon. But I want to leave just this one word, Mr. Dwyer, as you leave. And in your last part of it, where you said you believe the OAS, they're a good organization, and you believe that, they are an organization that people should be part of, something to that. Yeah. I want to say, I recall our last election, 2019, and where recommendations were made to the government of Dominica, and these points that were made to the government of Dominica, I do not believe enough was done by the OAS. So those persons who are actually listening, I know persons who are part of the OAS, I believe that something should be done to assist the nation. Thank you very much once again.
One love.
All right, Bev, Dwyer, thank you very much. See you
All
folks
the
next
very
time.
best.
Yes,
Take
man.
care.
Thank
God
you.
bless, man. Be safe.
Thank you.
All the best, Loftus, and you keep up the good work.
Thank
Yes,
you. Thank you,
indeed.
Bev. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye,
Bye-bye.
Dwyer.
Bye, Bev.
Go chat.
Yes, darling. Okay, good.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, folks, guess what? We're now going to just take a musical break. We know we have been at it for some time. Let's take a little musical break now. We'll be right back. Paula and I will spend maybe the next 10, 15 minutes with you, giving you some information / announcement when we get back here on the program. But as always, thank you very much for your listening. Thank you for your viewing. But more importantly, thank you for engaging us. Thank you for engaging our guests here each and every Sunday when we come around with this all-important program called Civic Vibes. Let's take this one from this brother here as we about to wind down this program. I'm in that kind of mood this afternoon, that Kenny Rogers mood. All right, folks, you never count your money when you're sleeping at the table, right? I want to know exactly if you guys heard this Kenny Rogers out there, because I'm getting the feedback from some persons that the audio may have been too low. So just give me a hit on the live if you guys are hearing that number from Kenny Rogers. Hit me up. All right, it seems as if we're having some little technical issues with our audio here, but so let us get back to the live business right here happening here. Let me just make sure that is off before we proceed. Yes, folks, again, we want to thank you very, very much for your eyes and ears here this afternoon on the Civic Vibes program right here. Thank you each and every afternoon for making or taking time off your busy Sunday afternoon and spending the time with us right here on the program Civic Vibes. Paula, anything of note that you want to contribute on or you want to tell your people out there before you go, Paula? Anything?
Well, Lofty, I want to say hats off to the many Dominicans to make it a point of duty every Wednesday, religiously, Lofty, and come down to the city religiously every Wednesday and come down to the city and walk for peace and justice. I want to continue to call on the Dominican people that you should continue to walk. I want to say hats off to the pastors who have been walking as well. It's rather unfortunate, though, Lofty, that last week, that 2 members of the opposition, parliamentary opposition, have been served with someone to appear in court. A number of persons have been walking. Last week was the 7th week of the walk, but 2 parliamentarians, opposition parliamentarians, were served with summons to appear before the court sometime later this month. I want to say this is a distraction, and this is trying to put fear in the minds of the other persons who are walking or who intend to walk. Lofty, this is a democratic country. Well, some persons say they do not believe that we are still a democratic country, but I still consider myself being in a democratic country. So I want to say that
advising the prime minister on. He is not doing that. And it's a long time I have been calling for he who sits in the chair as president should give some advice and intervene. And now we are seeing again where this victimization and what's really happening in the country that is not right. So I still want to make the call for Dominicans who believe in truth and justice come down to the city and walk on Wednesday. I'm calling on the pastors who've been quiet for a very long time that you all should join in the walk. Let's pray for Dominica. Let's pray to save this beautiful land. Let's not just sit by. And when things that we were not expecting to happen, then we will say, if only that we knew. Anyway, to the many Dominicans who usually listen to us every Sunday, Lofty and myself, for Civic Vibes to continue, we are still asking persons to contribute, make your contribution. So, Civic Vibes can continue the work that we are doing, because it really takes a lot. It's not like Lofty and I just come here every Sunday and, we just speak and then that's it. Besides, we put the effort into coming here every Sunday and speak. It comes with a cost. So I'm saying, persons, contribute, make your contribution, small as it is, every dollar counts, and we would greatly appreciate that. Hats off to the many viewers, persons who take the time of every Sunday, listen to us. You do it religiously. I want to say thanks, to every one of you. It's a lot of comments. We really cannot take all the comments, but we greatly appreciate that as well. And I want to say thank you to Lofty for the very, great work that he's been doing and continue to do this. We are doing this for Dominica. We are not doing it for ourselves, because there are times really that I have other things to do, but I say, you know what? I have to go out there and I have to have my voice being heard, because I know there are persons who sometimes they say, Paula, we make it religiously every Sunday to listen to you and Lofty, because you all give us some sense of hope. And I want to say, I'm a very determined person. I have my own belief, and I want to say I believe and I know that Dominica will be a better place, but we can only do it as one, collectively. So thank you, Lofty, and thank you to all our viewers and listeners this afternoon.
All right, Paula, thank you very, very much indeed. Yes, Paula, I can tell you, Paula is a dynamo. I normally call Paula dynamo because Paula is always on the run like me during the week, but she still finds time. She makes the time, that is, each and every Sunday to come whenever, the energy level is up and come and speak to us here at Dominican. So Paula, once again, I just want to thank you for your level of commitment to country. Thank you for your level of commitment to your fellow man, fellow woman, and that work, Paula, that you continue to do here on Civic Vibes and in other avenues. You are on NJAM in terms of the radio program. You just for your people. That work, one day it will reap the results that we all desire. We are all desirous of in Dominica. So again, thank you, Paula. What will our program be without you folks? We are here every Sunday, but we always have a huge listenership, a huge viewership. And so on behalf of the team, the Civic Vibes team, we want to thank you very much for taking time off your Sunday afternoon to be with us around that education table, as it were, where we can share, we can break bread, as it were, and feast upon what the team have put together for you guys in the course of the week. And Paula and I, we are just delivering to you on Sunday. All right. In terms of some announcements and some notices before we get out there, let me, on behalf of the team as well, sympathize and continue to empathize with the families, the grieving families out there. We heard of the losing of two young men who are in the prime of their life. We heard of their shooting, their death this week. And so again, Civic Vibes want to continue to use its platform to call on our young men out there in particular. We have challenges with our young women as well, but this is not the norm with our young women, where they kill each other uselessly through violent means. So, we want to echo that call with a lot of other persons to encourage our men. Men, let us use the energies that we have to use them in more positive ways to help build Dominica. If you have a difficulty for a brother, a fellow man of yours, taking a gun, taking a knife, taking a stone, whatever weapon you choose, is not the right way to deal with problems, to deal with your anger. And so, Civic Vibes again will try its very best. We are only trying here. We'll try to bring some people on to help young men in particular deal with anger management issues. You are in a jam together because a little beer fall on your shoe or your shirt or wine or whatever it is. It doesn't give you the impetus or whatever it takes to strike that person. And no, you can do it in a better way. Let's help you to help yourself. And so again, we just want to use this platform to advise all our men out there. Those of you, especially those of you, we know you're going through a hard time in Dominica, where employment is concerned. Paula is not, we're not advocating that you do anything illegal to get monies to feed your family and whatever it is to take care of yourself. But we know the reality on the ground is some of you guys are involved in the drug trade. And it is not just because you are in the illegal trade, as it were, for you to think that anything and everything must be illegal. So taking a gun and whatever it is, it is not good. You are only making your race, men like yourself, much more extinct. And so with the grieving families at this time, we want to sympathize with your loss. We want to empathize with your loss, with you at this time. We know it is tight, but please find the courage, find the strength from above to go through this very, very trying time. That is the most we can do. That is the most we can ask. That is the most we can plead at this time. But again, it takes a community people to raise a child. And that is why this program, Civic Vibes, was birthed. We realize and recognize that in our communities out there, that is not the mantra anymore. A matter of fact, some persons out there, parents even take umbrage when the elderly in the communities help correct or help to put a child or children straight. And so we need to get back to those days. We need to get back to the days when, your community was a safe place to live and to thrive. We are slowly but surely becoming communities that persons are scared of even leaving their doors, their windows open for 5 minutes. That is not us, Dominica. That is not us, Dominicans. And so again, we want to plead with you, humbly that is, let us get back to those days where we could say we are Dominicans and we could say that very proudly. And so that wanton shooting and killing and raping and stealing and those nefarious acts, we cannot continue to have them in our society. I know sometimes the role models, they are not there to sort of reinstill or reinculcate these values. But please, parents, let us play our part to help bring up our children, as the good book says, in the way of the Lord, that when he or she grows, then he or she will not depart from it. There are too many wayward parents out there that they are not looking out for the welfare of the children. And hence the result we see today. So we just again want to use this platform to encourage, let us get back to these good old days, people, okay? Next week, it's a very unfortunate notice that I'm going to give you there, but come next week, that is the 22nd of May, we will not be having a program come next week. The situation is that I have some personal engagement that I must attend to. And so the Civic Vibes program for next week will be postponed to the 29th of May. And talking about the 29th, people, we all know the significance of 29th of May in Dominica and our history. And so on that Sunday, the 29th of May, Civic Vibes is planning as we speak a very, very important 29th of May program for you, where most likely we will not be here. We will not be in that setting, but we will be out somewhere in the community whereby we will be having a very live and vivid discussion with some of the actors that were right there during the 70s, during that era. And so we will kind of lively up that discussion, as it were, by going into the community and getting some of the reports, getting some of the vibe, as it were, that went on in the 70s, especially 79. We all know, some of you know very well what went on that day. I, for sure, I was just what? I was just what? Little boy. I didn't know nothing about that. Infant. So I am relying on the elders, persons who were there through the thick and thin to kind of piece it together, hoping that one day, that a true account, a very true account of the 70s era will be written, documented, that is, so that the generations to come will really appreciate and understand the kind of Dominica that we had in the 70s, all right? So for sure on the 29th, once God gives Paula and I the grace and the team the grace, we will be bringing you a very interesting discussion on some of the events that unfolded, not just on the day, but that preceded that. And so we'll try to bring some of the main actors that were right there, that saw what happened, that knew what happened, that were commanders on the ground, that were, just in it. We will be bringing you that very important discussion on the 29th, not next week, on the 29th of May. So you guys can look forward to that lively and engaging discussion from the Civic Vibes platform on the 29th of May. All right. What else is on the agenda here? We all heard as well this week, again, another very unfortunate situation where it is reported, or it was reported in the news, that one police officer is being questioned. He was arrested as we speak for some kind of situation with the law, where the law is concerned. And I just want to use this opportunity out there, the medium now, to kind of use this opportunity at this time to make a call to the lawmen and women of this land. Dominicans, that is the situation that came ahead this week with one policeman being arrested. But we, for the past time, we have been hearing of situations where, some of our law people, they are infringing the law in more ways than one. And I'm going to put a disclaimer, because I don't want anybody to go and say Lofty is against this, Apollo is against that. Everybody have their right to live their life. That is their private life. How they choose. That is your right. I can't take it from you. But at the end of the day, you have to understand sometimes what you do in your private life, it has a way or ways of filtering in the public space, a public domain. And so on that note, I would just want to implore on all police officers at this time, especially the men, the policemen. I'm getting from very disturbing reports that there's a high level of buggery. I cannot say it in no other term. There's a high level of buggery in the police force at this time. You guys know yourself. Again, what you do in private, that is up to you. But when it comes to your duty as a police officer, it should not be seen. It should not be known as to what you do in private. You should try to bring it out in the public or to the public. Yes, I want to repeat it. There's a high level of buggery taking place among some of the male officers at not just headquarters, but in the different police districts around the length and breadth of this country. Yours truly is getting to know about it. And so I think it is time that I bring it out to the public in terms of this announcement. So you guys, please stop it. according to Mr. Licks, he would say, stop your dirty ways. That is not what you should be pushing out for our young boys to be engaging, especially where your duty as an officer of the law is concerned. And Paula, you know what is very sad about that situation again, Paula? I'm being told, and when I say people I'm being told, I'm not being told from the sky, I'm being told from the grapevine, that some of these police officers who engage in these acts of buggery against their fellow or other men out there, they are using their girlfriends and wives as shields, as a facade to continue these dirty business. I know. Some persons out there, Paula, you can chime in. Some persons out there, you guys know some of these guys, some of these individuals who are involved in these actions. If you have what it takes in terms of some level of authority over these individuals, please tell them when they're engaging in their private matters, don't try to bring it in the public sphere. It is not good. It is not boding well for our public. And just before I end on that note, some of you women out there now, you are complicit in that behavior in some way, shape, or form as well. Because what I'm hearing is that some of you women out there, when these men come with their dirty ways with you, you allow that to happen as well to you from them. And so not only men are having anal intercourse with men, some of these men are having anal intercourse with their girlfriends, their wives, or a passy they meet somewhere. And so you ladies, I am imploring on you now, please, that was not the reason. That was not the purpose for that exit area in your body. So please don't tolerate that. Please don't perpetuate that level of dirtiness, as it were, to continue with you ladies, because it only serves, it only gives the men that level of confidence that if they can do it with you, then they can go ahead and do it with Jack and Jill and Jacqueline and whoever it is. Sorry if you guys have that names out there. All right. I just wanted to quote unquote exhale this afternoon, because Paula, I'm hearing that is very, very prevalent in our society today, especially where young men are getting involved in that dirty business. So Civic Vibes is a platform where after we do the research, we get the necessary information. We will push out the facts as it relates to this matter. We have some of the details, but some of these details are much too graphic now to bring to you. All we're asking is that you guys just take it easy. Take it easy out there. Please, just take it easy. Paul, any final thoughts before we wrap up things here?
Well, Mr. Licks, please don't send Lofty any lawsuit, okay?
Don't send Mark Murray behind me.
All right.
For
I mean, he
copyright.
didn't seek permission here this afternoon, but Lofty couldn't have said it any better, because he said it in the local term. He used the words like what you usually use. We call you dirty habits. So I want to say all those that involve, just like Lofty said it, in this dirty habit, you all need to stop it. Lofty, our time have come and gone, you know.
Indeed.
So to all our listeners and viewers, again, I want to say thank you very much. And like you have said, we won't be here next week, but the following week. So our people, keep us close to your hearts. Keep Lofty and I in your prayers, and continue to pray for Dominica. Thank you, Lofty.
All right, Paula, thank you very much. As Paula make an exit from here, then I'm going to punch at least one more track in your hearing and we'll sure bring this program to a wrap here right about now in the next 10 minutes thereabout. Paula, once again, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah,
All right, indeed. All right, folks, that is it for us here. Let me see if I could hook up now a track so that I could put into your hearing before we get out of here this afternoon. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this.